This is very strange. Well, I'll not speak. You can just try to engage people before.
Yes, okay. Yeah. I think we are now live. Colleagues, everyone joining us, welcome back. We are in a special Commonwealth Youth Program panel on redefining and reclaiming youth principles in a post-pandemic world. We're so sorry if you lost us for a moment. We lost connection during our conversation. We were having an exciting discussion with Kim Allen, Supriya Paul, Christine Odera, and Kendall Vincent. They're a group of leaders doing amazing work all over the world. And they've been telling us about the key principles that underpin their work. And we've been talking about partnership, participation, civic engagement, capacity building in a very equitable way, and making sure that everyone is included so that nobody is left behind. We've been talking about regional solidarity and Commonwealth unity as well as a part of it. We hope that you are back with us again and joining in the discussion. We're going to wrap up a little bit with our panelists. We're going to try and get a few more tidbits and thoughts and ideas from them based on the work that they do. But those of us joining us on YouTube, you will also have the opportunity to pose any questions in the chat. We'd be happy to pose those to the panelists so that you can hear directly from them about the issues that matter to you. So we're just picking up, I think, Kim, you were wrapping us up, I think, on an issue around that difference between policy, advocacy at the level of the CYC, and some of the practical things that young people are doing, the innovations that they're doing in various thematic areas. And so I want to come back to Christine, Supriya, and Kendall again to talk about some of those things. Supriya, this issue of partnership and working together and building capacity that is, marshaling that josh, that energy of young people to prepare them for the working world and give them the skills and tools is important. But how do you sustain this massive enterprise online? What are some of the principles that are driving and keeping that network going in this time?
Yeah, I think some of the principles or values that continue to drive us, and personally, my favorite would be perseverance. And I think that is a word used by almost every person who's watching a Josh Talks or is enrolled in any of our courses. And I think that's the only way that we all can do well as social entrepreneurs. Because it's a long journey. Something like education or skilling is a systemic problem. You need to give your life to it, and the only way that you can actually flourish or prosper is if you persevere every single day with the challenges that come up, with the lack of funding that exists. So it's a difficult environment to work in. It's a difficult user base to work for. Because these are typically people from lower income households that we work with, so generally ignored, by mainstream media, by advertisers, etc. So I think that's sort of like my one go-to word for everything.
That's amazing, Supriya. I think that is so critical. And I have to say, I mean, it's such an honor to be in your presence, all of you, because I think with the young people we work with in the Commonwealth Youth Program, we see that perseverance every day. The challenges are many, not just for young people, but for everyone in the world. We're in challenging times, but we are so proud to see your perseverance to continue to deliver great solutions to change the world. And you spoke, Supriya, about how the initiative Josh Talks really tries to reach out to those who previously would be ignored or excluded. And I wondered if, Christine, in the work that you do, there's any particular group of people who we really need to pay attention to as we look to the future, who perhaps are being excluded from some of the work that you do around peace and development. Who's being left behind? Who's a priority?
Interestingly enough, almost everyone, to a large extent, is being left behind. And this is what I mean by everyone. You realize that those in schools with the pandemic were forced to be out of school. So again, they were left behind at that particular point. Those at work were left behind because they were forced to work at home. And some of us come from developing countries where working at home is not the best environment to work in, because we live in shared apartments, we live in informal settlements where internet, there's a lot of noise coming from the neighbors, there are children playing around and you can't tell them, shh, I'm having a meeting. It can't happen. And then you go to the people who are not working, who are even at a worse disadvantaged position because they do not have that work. They do not have that opportunity to go and get their daily wages from the informal works that they used to do in the community. And so it's literally now everyone being disadvantaged. And I think the question now is, how best are we able to redefine inclusivity? And how will inclusivity look post the pandemic? Because this is literally not leaving anyone behind. Again, most of us will be disadvantaged more than others. And so to go to your question, who do we need to give priority? We need to give priority to those who are more disadvantaged, those who had no way of even getting access to healthcare. And that also came to help me reflect on what Supriya said on perseverance. Resilience was also another thing that we saw with the most underprivileged people when it came to COVID-19. And I think as a principle now, it's for us to really look at what inequality looks like post-pandemic. Because, well, while some of us were crying because we were forced not to go to work, someone had never had that opportunity to go and work. And so when we talk about even radicalization and countering violent extremism, those were the specific structural issues that make a lot of people opt to choose violence as opposed to amicably finding ways to address their grievances, finding ways to really meet the needs. And that brings me to the point of, usually in social entrepreneurship, we look mostly at the supply bit of it, the capacity building bit of it. But who really is looking at the demand side of it? When it comes to decision making, that's what a lot of us young people have been asking for. How are we then going to be in the table while the majority of us are excluded? And now more than ever, unemployment and unemployability is a big issue that a lot of us are facing. And so even just going back to the Youth Development Index that was launched the other day by the Commonwealth, the more the world is becoming safer, most women are feeling unsafe. And these are literally the issues that are making more women feel and ending up feeling unsafe, because you realize that when it comes to unemployment, when the head of the house, who in some of the parts of the Commonwealth are the male, when they cannot get something to feed the family with, then it's chaos in the house, because then the woman wants to get the money to buy food to prepare for the family, but then the husband did not get any food. I mean, in this time and age, we're still talking about inequality when it comes to access to sanitary towels, which is a natural phenomenon that we don't have any way of not experiencing it, because we are growing. And that is just a phenomenal bit of becoming a woman. And so you realize that, again, the disparities are very different when you look across the genders. And that also brings us to the issue of interest. So when we're looking at finding ways and priorities, to whose interest are we serving? And that literally calls all of us to really be keen on not just having decisions, but making these decisions inclusive to speak to women interest, to speak to male interest, to speak to children interest, and to speak to a whole of society interest. And through that, through the perseverance that we have seen, through the resilience that we've seen across the board, it's also just making sure that we are true to ourselves as a people and true to ourselves as sovereign states. You know, it is so sad that climate change is also a pandemic in itself. We are also experiencing a lot of mental health issues. And so again, mental health issues cut across. We have actually seen those people who are employed having mental health issues. And so it's literally just looking at every sector and leaving no one behind, because we are running the risk of losing our most energetic population to the issues that have not been addressed with the people who are not energetic enough to meet some of these needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, for reminding us how important it is for us to remember that equity and equality is a lens through which we need to look at the world. So it means that whichever area we're in, whichever sector we're in, whichever part of the world we're in, we need to look there and apply that lens to identify who are the most disadvantaged in each circumstance. And I think that's important. You also mentioned climate change. We had hoped to have with us the 2022 Commonwealth Young Person of the Year, Frank Kamagisha, who unfortunately couldn't join us. But he and Kim, you also mentioned earlier, the importance of that issue and finding the right responses to that. Because it's such an important thing when we think of activism around the world and young people's engagement. I think climate change comes up at the top of the list in terms of what we can visibly see. And I wondered, Kendall, in the Caribbean region, what are some of the priorities for the CRIC and your members going forward?
Thank you very much, Terry, Ms. Roberts. In terms of our priorities going forward, I think one of the first things is that we spoke about the need to conduct a membership audit in terms of like understanding really. I think this is really just to kind of get a pulse in terms of what is happening in terms of the national youth councils across the Caribbean and the status of youth development in the country. I think it's very first. I think it's a matter of priority in order to know where we are and where we're going strategically is in terms of like internally, in terms of institutional strengthening and sustainability. In terms of, I think that is very important to organizations and initiatives in terms of sustainability, just to kind of, you know, and in terms of being able to, sometimes we go into organizations, but in terms of, so the membership audit will help us as an executive sort of understand what is really, get a pulse in terms of what is happening in terms of, you know, and I use this terminology, are the young persons, and one of the most important things or quotes that I would have come across in terms of, you know, sometimes we wear these youth leaders and these titles as, you know, sleeves on our shoulders, simply put out very frankly, but who are we leading? Is there any are we really connecting with the people that we serve? In terms of our target, you know, audience? Yes, we go to these conferences. Yes, we come on these platforms and talk about we're representing and we're advocating for young persons, but are we out there in the field? Are we out there? And I know that although we're very much, you know, when I say far and wide, but how are we finding ways to connect the work that we do with the people that we, or the young persons that we intend to serve? And how do we ensure that yes, there's a divide or a digital divide, but how are we finding ways to connect these opportunities to young persons that, you know, that they could get the next Christina, the next Supriya, and the next Kim, because I'm pretty much sure that some of us are really at the tail end of these experiences. So sustainability, one in terms of what are some of the things to answer your question, one in terms of being able to conduct some institutional strengthening, understanding where those NYCs or what where they at. Two is in terms of capacity building, in terms of ensuring that there's a next generation of young bright young leaders to kind of step into these roles. One of the things and I would have looked I would have gotten a chance to look at the Youth Development Index, where it speaks to a civic engagement and youth participation, and that is declining. I think that is one of the areas of concern that we while our generation now, for us on the call here, is very much into the volunteerism and taking up these opportunities. And I think that is one of the key things as well. And that is why the team for CHOGM really speak the youth forum, really speak to me in terms of taking charge of our future. In terms of what is, I think the time is now ready for young persons to kind of, hone in and, not just look for opportunities, but really take charge and shape that future. So I think for CRICB and going forward, our priorities is one, in terms of institutional strengthening, two, looking at the ways in terms of which we can build on sustainability within terms of capacity building and training. Another thing, and I would have spoken to this earlier, is in terms of how do we, in terms of building effective partnerships and relationships going forward, so that the work that we are doing, all of the various stakeholders here, all the work that we're doing, which is so interconnected, and we spend and we invest so much time, money, and resources, how is that? How could we maximize or scale up impact through collaboration? So I think if I was to sort of identify three key main priorities, is one, institutional strengthening, looking at doing the work to strengthen the institution, two, capacity building, and three, building stronger partnerships and networks. And I think that would be the three priority areas that would, of course, lead towards ensuring that the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, and of course, we are very much happy, of course, to rely on the support, or to be able to tap into the support of the Commonwealth, in terms of being able to kind of, like, the work that we do would filter into the work of the Commonwealth, and by extension what we all try to do, so that in the next Youth Development Index, you would sort of be able to see some improvements in terms of that civic engagement and participation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kendall. And your comments on sustainability and impact give me a chance to bring in some of our participants joining us on YouTube. We have a question from Sarah Banks. Sarah, drop us a line and let us know where you're joining us from. We have 10 minutes to take a few questions from the group. And Sarah is asking, she says, I wonder what the contributors feel has been the impact of linking across the Commonwealth program. How do you learn from each other in the very different contexts? That's a great question. Who wants to take that one? Kim, do you want to?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry,
yes.
I saw Christine. Kim and then Christine.
Yes, Dr. Terry, and thank you for that question. It's really relevant, especially with the outcome statement of the Youth Declaration from the Commonwealth Youth Forum. So context is very important. The Commonwealth Youth Council understands government priorities, national priorities, and youth, of course, youth stakeholder objectives and their organizational goals and objectives with context, with the work that they are doing, and of course with the national youth delegates under the Commonwealth Council and sister Commonwealth youth networks working in those countries. So it creates this learning, at the same time knowledge sharing. So we have to identify or work with the nationals, youth delegates, stakeholders on the ground, to understand the context of the country, their priorities, and priorities change, and it's not even fixed across. It can change. Governments can realign with the Youth Council. It's supporting those priorities. At the same time, we have a declaration, we have a strategy in place that we can, it's as a fixed document, but it's flexible. That's the beauty of it. It's flexible, and we can cross card across working together to pick out what's necessary for which country, pick out what's necessary for which region, that we can partner and work together with the regional lead councils at that level. And knowledge sharing is important in this area of the context.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Let me jump to Christine, and just letting you know, we just have about 7 minutes left in our panel, unfortunately, but let me give you some words and then Kendall before we wrap up.
Right. So at the core of what Kim has also alluded to, the diversity also brings that social support. And that is something that we have seen really work for young people, the fact that somebody else from a different continent can identify with the struggles that you have in a different continent. How you will solve them is very different because of the context that Kim was talking about. But then you will realize that you are not alone in the struggle. And I think if anything, that is something that I have learned, and not just as an individual, but also a young person in the space. The fact that the context in the Caribbean might be very different from the context in Africa. The context in Asia and Pacific can be very different. But at the end of the day, it's the same, almost the same issue, And just knowing that I am not alone in the struggle gives me a lot of strength and power to do the work that I do even more. So, hey, join us.
Wonderful. I love that call to action there, Christine, to join in. Kendall, let me come to you to have your thoughts on that issue of what you learned from working together, working with people across contexts. We've been given a little more time because we apologize for that disruption earlier and we lost a little bit of time. So the organizers have given us an additional 5 minutes. So let's hear from you again, Kendall.
So yeah. In terms of what are the ways, or how do we, we learn so much in terms of, best practices. While we come from different regions and we share very unique sort of perspectives or situations, I think, there is some commonality in terms of all the issues are related or interrelated somewhat across the board. The situation or the specific situation may differ. But in terms of what we do, and one of my experiences in terms of being able to, network and engage with other young leaders from across the different regions. And I think, one of the clearest examples, or one of the most recent examples, is when the Commonwealth would have convened this youth task force to put together the planning of the recently concluded Commonwealth Youth Forum. That provided an excellent opportunity for diverse young people from different parts to work together, to pull this thing together. And this early morning reminds me of those early morning, meetings that we started virtually. I thought it was over, but this was sort of a little reminder. And I think that provided an excellent opportunity, an example, case in point, where young persons were from diverse groupings were really tasked to work together. And I think it created an opportunity. I think coming out of that experience, it really afforded me the opportunity to learn and grow so much stronger as an individual. One, in terms of it affords you the opportunity to understand how to respect and cultural diversities in terms of I think that that experience as well in terms of understanding cultural context and understanding the differences that we see that we appreciate diversity and all these things, but when you're really in the situation, because it's one thing virtually, but then when you're reaching person and you have to adjust, it really adjusts very quickly, mind you, to the reality. And I think that's that was one in terms of that the learned experience and being able to share best practices in terms of learning from each other. In terms of it really sort of allow to see what worked, what didn't work, what could be and also kind of pivot our approach. So it kind of helps us. I think each one of us on the task force would have taken away something that would enable us to go back to, sort of kind of like, retool our work and to create in order to be able, so that we can be able to create a bigger impact. So I think, being part of this Commonwealth family presents opportunities. And I would encourage young people to get involved with a network, reach out, visit the Commonwealth Youth Council, social media, Commonwealth Youth Program, and get involved because there are definitely opportunities. One, you meet persons from diverse backgrounds. Two, you get to share and learn best practices and upskill. This experience was or has been an experience of a lifetime, and it's something that along this journey, it continues to afford me the opportunity to learn and to grow. It allows for personal growth. There's so much that could be said, but time is so, little to go into the different nuances or all the pros and cons. And just you leave, you walk away with friends and families. You get to, I think that is also part of young people. We're very social beings, and being stuck inside COVID. It helps with the mental health, of course, being able to, walk away with new friends, new connections. So I think that is one of the pros or the benefits of, yes, the work is hard. I'm not going to lie, the work is hard, it's difficult, it's long nights. That's the reality check in there, but you also take away with it. It also helps groom you into a much better, stronger individual.
Thank you so much, Kendall. And so I suppose you agree with Supriya's point earlier about perseverance, because the work is difficult, but you persevere and then the rewards are there. So as we move to wrap up this amazing panel, I have one more question that came in for you, and I'll ask you to give a tour, a round robin across the panel. Unfortunately, we lost Supriya's connection, but next year, someone mentioned that they heard at the Commonwealth, coming out of the Commonwealth Summit last week, that 2023, next year, is going to be a year of youth action for the Commonwealth. That sounds really exciting. And I wondered what you all thought about that year of action and what you'd like to see. Maybe give us a summary of your key principles and what you'd like to see in that 2023 year of youth action. Let me go to Christine.
The one thing I love to see is the energy. And just to reiterate Her Excellency Mia Mottley's, the Prime Minister of Barbados quote, when she says, "Our people are our greatest resource and we must never forget this." And this is just to say, young people are our greatest resource. And the Commonwealth has been one of the organizations that has really been intentional in tapping into that resource. And so to celebrate 50 years, 50 years of everything that we've been mentioning in this conversation, 50 years of perseverance, 50 years of resilience, 50 years of making sure that we speak truth to power, be it with the Commonwealth heads of governments, be it with the youth ministers, be it with just us as young people taking responsibility of the work that we do on the ground. It's 50 years of also looking back and saying, that's how far we've come. And that's so important to me, especially running a Commonwealth network, because most of the time as people, we don't really look back to reflect on how far we have come. Most of the time, we keep complaining on how things have been bad, how there are no finances. But then you look back 50 years and you realize the pride is in the journey. And honestly, we are far from achieving everything that we want. But if we come together, just how much we can be and how much resource, if we really and intentionally tap into, we're able to not only see a peaceful and more united Commonwealth, we are able to influence the world. Because, hey, Togo has just joined us. And that is to tell you of how the young people in Togo have also just been seeing this conversation, and they're willing to say, look, we want to be part of this great venture. And this is literally a call to everyone in the globe. We might be limited to the 53 member states because of our shared history, but that is not an excuse not to join us. Come, this is where you belong. I thank you.
Great. Kendall, give us your 30-second summary.
So the Commonwealth Year of Youth, it presents an opportunity to place emphasis and focus on young persons, our energy, our vibe, our connection and our unique ability. So I think it definitely affords us the opportunity to one, increase those partnerships, really show young persons step out and show young persons achievements, highlight young persons challenges, create solutions. So it really gives an opportunity for young persons. I'm really, really excited about 2023 and the possibilities, but it also gives us the opportunity to really highlight a year of highlighting young persons and all the fabulous, amazing young persons and the work that young persons are doing.
Excellent, thank you. And final word to Kim, your 30 seconds of summary and what you'd like to see for 2023. Kim, are you hearing us?
Yes, can you hear me? Thank you so much. I think for the Commonwealth Youth Council, and given the role, it's a privilege to work together with other sister youth networks and to see the realization of the declaration, and seeing that realized, I really urge and call on the youth stakeholders, the youth partners, Commonwealth, and every individual to take ownership of this declaration in whatever areas of background, whatever fields you're in every level, to take ownership of this declaration. And it's basically envisioning your future, and that's the theme of it, taking charge of our future. You can take charge of your future, but without action, taking action is key and crucial in this way forward. So year of 2023, and even starting now, straight after and during the forum itself, to take action. Dialogues leads towards action. That is crucial and important. And reiterating what it's been a privilege to meet the heads of state, and reflecting on the words of President, His Excellency President Kagame, and it says, I'm looking forward to these times ahead of so many challenges, but even more opportunities. So let's find a way, end of quote. And so, yeah, looking forward to working with everyone to find that way in action.
Thank you so much. I thank each of my panelists, Christine Odera, Kim Allen, Kendall Vincent, and Supriya Paul, who joined us. The theme is energy, Josh in Hindi, energy to go forward for action, for partnership, for accountability, for ownership, and for impact on all the issues that we confront. If we do it together in unity, we are now 56 in the Commonwealth, and we invite everyone else in the world to join us. Check us out on our social media handles. Look for the Commonwealth Youth Program, and you can learn about each of these organizations that were represented here. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this discussion. We wish you an excellent rest of the conference. Take good care.
Thank you.